All right, ladies and gentlemen, very lucky to be joined by another friend here on the program. He joins me as we're about to ramp up for UFC 318 next week, and things happening in this crazy sport of MMA. Jon Anik, I appreciate you for joining me here with Jon Jones's boxing shorts around your shoulder there.
It's great to see you as always. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. So those are Jon Jones boxing shorts behind me. I won them in a Patrick Mahomes golf tournament silent auction. So part of the reason I made the bid was because I think it was the only mixed martial arts item that was available, but also because I need the story behind them because the stitching of the Jon Bones Jones is outstanding. The autograph is there. I just don't know when he might have even put these things on. Looks like maybe it would fit my waist, my man. So we'll have to ask Johnny Bones about it. But yeah, it's a nice little studio piece for now as we get the new office set up.
You buy stuff at auctions, right? Like MMA memorabilia. This isn't the only thing you've bought.
Correct, but it's a supportive measure, right? I'm trying to support the charity that is 15 and the Mahomies, which is Patrick Mahomes' charity for children. So yeah, but I was the only bidder, thank goodness, about $1,500 for the Jon Bones Jones shorts, and we're happy to support a great cause.
Dude, you got a great deal there. By the way, what is your top 2 or 3 things that you've bought at these auctions that you've got?
So last year I bought a Cincinnati Bengals Jamar Chase helmet. He's a wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. Could be lost on some of your audience, but a lot of the pieces that I've gotten, I've just sort of bought on my own outside of auction. Great Kevin Garnett piece, the great Boston Celtic that I bought for my brother, a Drake May signed helmet. He's the New England Patriots quarterback. But I have a lot of MMA memorabilia. Got a lot of signed boxing gloves. Floyd Mayweather and Oscar De La Hoya both signing the same glove. If anybody wants that, I'll send it to you. But yeah, eventually we'll get this new office together.
I'll tell you, there's not much happening in the sporting world right now when it comes to MMA. But one of the news stories, it was heartbreaking, but it was great to see that he's doing better, was Ben Askren, right? I know we all watched the video. This is the MMA fighting graphic where they broke down some of the stuff that he said about the, horrible and difficult circumstance he found himself in. It was difficult to see him in that condition, but it was so good to see that things are getting better, that he still had a sense of humor. What was your reaction when you got a chance to watch the video, like many of us?
My goodness, I love Ben Askren, and I think we're all just so thankful that he is alive and he has felt the support far and wide, not just from his inner circle, which extends far and wide, but from the MMA community in droves, and not just financially, just all the love and support that we know is ingrained within this tight-knit community. And this is sort of as severe a case as I think we've all experienced, and just trying to lift him up from afar as best we can. And, I remember a time when we used to do matchmaker meetings before we would call these fights. And either Kenny Florian or Brian Stam was with me, and I showed up to a matchmaker meeting with Joe Silva and Sean Shelby wearing a funky Ben Askren yellow t-shirt. And Joe Silva didn't take too kindly to that. He told me to go back to my fucking hotel room and take it off or change or something, because Ben Askren was with another promotion and it was a UFC fight week. But I thought the UFC should be in the Ben Askren business at the time. And, I'm just thankful that he is alive. And, we look forward to positive details on the recovery. But he's an absolute legend, in wrestling and mixed martial arts, and a dear friend of my dear friend, Daniel Cormier. And thankful that at least in terms of some of the orange cones and hurdles and obstacles in his way, that he has cleared some of them, but obviously a long road ahead for Ben.
Yeah, wishing him a speedy recovery. And also, people don't realize he's done a lot behind the scenes for the wrestling community, for all sorts of communities. He's always been so nice to me, to all the media. Just a real class act all the way around. And it's funny, in the video message towards the end, he's already saying, when I get a chance, I want to give more back to the community. And it's like, wow, it just shows you what kind of person Ben Askren really is. So shout out to him. Speaking of shout outs, shout out to Belal Muhammad, right, who celebrated his birthday. I saw on your Instagram stories, man.
Yeah.
37 years old, back in action, coming back into action soon. What was it like? Did you get a chance to spend some time with Belal for his birthday, or did you?
I did not. That was, I think, an old video, but we did have a text exchange. Happy 37th birthday to the former UFC welterweight champion Belal Muhammad. One thing I said to him after he won the belt against Leon Edwards was, "You are going to be the current or former UFC welterweight champion for the rest of your life. And even though it was a shorter reign than he would have liked as he tries to sort of get back on the horse and get his belt back, he's always champ now. Happy birthday, champ, right? A year ago when I wished him a happy birthday, I didn't say happy birthday, champ. You know what I mean? So happy birthday, Belal Muhammad. Congratulations on being 10 years my junior, 37 years of age. And quickly, one other note, if I could, on the Askren thing, I'll take 10 seconds. But when he
Please.
is shouting philanthropy, as he is 147 pounds, having lost 50 pounds, he doesn't remember the entire month of June. I think it makes a lot of us in the public eye think about whether or not we're doing enough to help other people, you know, and using our platform enough to really help other people. When you see him as he begins his recovery, thinking about helping other people. And I know you brought it up, but I just want to circle back to that for a second.
I think that's a great point. Got me thinking about that too. And also just how much he's done for the community and just how community minded he is. It's a beautiful thing to see. And speaking of just Belal and the fact that he's celebrating this birthday, right? He's in a great position where he's going to probably have a massive fight next. I saw DC was on the Kamaru Usman and Henry Cejudo podcast, and he tried to kind of sell Kamaru on this fight with Belal. And, you know, Kamaru makes sense, right? Like, he's trying to position himself for a title shot. He doesn't know what's going to happen between JDM and Islam Makhachev. But really, like, that's kind of the fight to make. Belal Muhammad versus Kamaru Usman. There's some history there, some bad blood there. It seems like the fight that everybody wants to see. Do you reckon that's kind of like the top contender in your mind? Is it what you'd like to see next for Belal and Kamaru?
The welterweight division is so interesting right now because when it comes to Dana White and Mick Maynard and Sean Shelby and Hunter Campbell and whoever is making these decisions, right? Who do they think is more title shot worthy outside of Islam Makhachev challenging Jack Della Maddalena, right? Right now, between Shavkat Rakhmonov, Ian Machado Gary, Sean Brady, who is the number one contender, Kamaru Usman, on and on it goes. That's why Ilia Topuria was stopped short of begged to not mention welterweight. There is a wealth of contenders. All these guys. Sean Brady's already earned a championship opportunity as far as I'm concerned. Ian Machado Gary on the strength of the win over Carlos Prates, and Shavkat Rakhmonov was already in position to fight for the title. So it's an embarrassment of riches at welterweight. How it pertains to Belal Muhammad, the former champion, I don't know. But as the former champion, you represent a huge fight for a lot of people. I do not think that Kamaru Usman will take that fight. I do not think the calendar is going to align for those two, even though there is obvious heat and friction. But I think Belal Muhammad wants to get the taste out of that Jack Della Maddalena fight out of his mouth as soon as possible. As great a fight as it was, and as many moments as he may have had, Belal is not the type to sort of idle, whether Ramadan is in his way or not. So I expect Belal to come back strong against somebody in a main event or a co-main event on pay-per-view, and it'll probably be against one of the names that I just uttered.
It's going to be fascinating to see how many title defenses Ilia Topuria will need to have before it's just, he's just going to. Right?
No,
they set it after this one. Hey, they set it after this win.
You were right. You brought it up. You brought it up before I think even Ilia himself did. So I tip my cap to you. But yes, I mean, my gosh. I mean, do we talk about all the contenders at lightweight? On and on it goes.
I mean, you got Paddy Pimblett potentially next for Ilia. Do you like that fight if that is the next one?
So, I mean, straight meritocracy, right? Like we always say, if this is the Anik and Florian podcast fighting championships, we're probably given the opportunity to Arman Tsarukyan, even though, you know, depending, I think, on who you ask on that executive floor, what happened at UFC 311 might be a different story. So when the iron is hot, oftentimes you're supposed to strike, and the Paddy Pimblett Ilia Topuria fight is sort of there for the making. Justin Gaethje has a case. Arman Tsarukyan, I think, probably has the strongest case. But Paddy Pimblett is a real problem, and I think lost in the narrative of how deserving and worthy Paddy Pimblett is as a number one contender title challenger is just how viable he might be skill for skill. He's got a great frame. He's a good grappler. You can't knock Scousers out. Ilia Topuria figures to test that trend, but we'll see what they do. I think those are some fascinating conversations in the matchmaking meetings on a Tuesday when it comes to Ilia Topuria versus Arman Tsarukyan versus Paddy Pimblett or anybody else, Justin Gaethje. Sometimes I wish I was a fly on the wall.
Well, I also mentioned that because this coming, not this weekend, but the weekend after UFC 318, we've obviously got the BMF title, Dustin Poirier's retirement match. And even before we get into that fight, Max Holloway, he's already saying, hey, if I win here, I get this BMF, keep this BMF belt. There's some roads that could potentially lead to another fight with Ilia for the belt. What do you make of Max Holloway already wanting to sort of position himself for a rematch with Ilia Topuria? And for yourself as a fan, not someone who works for the UFC, what would you like to see from Max Holloway in order to get a fight like that?
It's a great question. And sometimes I just want to sort of have a conversation with you as a fan and give you my opinion and honestly
Mm.
ask you what you think of it. I will lead with this. I don't believe that win or lose, Max Holloway loses much of anything against Dustin Poirier. I think history suggests that he is going to perform well. Obviously, it's not ideal if Max Holloway has lost two trilogies 0-3 to Volkanovski and Dustin Poirier, but there's so many big fights for Max at 155 pounds. Even were he to go back down to 145 pounds, depending upon whom is the champion down there, he can make that weight. And this is also a man who has suggested to me in the past that he wants to take a UFC fight at 85 before he retires. And don't put it past him. I mean, I certainly think that it's not out of the realm of possibility that Max Holloway at some point competes at 170 pounds, given his frame. I don't know how much he likes food or not. I don't think he likes food as much as Volkanovski, but maybe not. I think he does have a sweet tooth. But my gosh, think about all the fights for Max Holloway at 155 pounds, championship or otherwise. The Topuria rematch potentially in a different weight class, which adds some intrigue to it. The Charles Oliveira rematch, that fight happened in 2015 in Saskatoon. It was a quick injury. All of these are big fights. Max Holloway, even if he loses to Dustin Poirier, is going to be in a lightweight title eliminator against one of these guys, right? Is he not? So
Yeah.
I think he doesn't lose much of anything, and I think he is the betting favorite right now to beat Dustin Poirier at UFC 318. So
It's interesting because it's almost like there's this side division at lightweight. Like you got Charles Oliveira, Dan Hooker, for example, Max Holloway. And it's like, even if these guys aren't fighting for the belt, still a good sort of pathway to do like this BMF pathway, right?
don't hunt what you can't kill. I have a knife right here, Dan Hooker. That's just to open letters. But Dan Hooker, I think, is the most worthy fighter across most every division who has never fought for the BMF title to get an opportunity to do so. So a fight between Max Holloway and Dan Hooker, I think makes a lot of sense for the BMF title, right? Were Max Holloway to successfully defend it here against Dustin Poirier. But my man, as much as I love the BMF title, and I really do, I have come around in totality, full circle on that thing. When it was first introduced, I had a little pause. But I
Yeah.
think Max Holloway needs to be in the business of chasing undisputed world championships. And I think he is probably going to utter as much with me in the fighter meeting next week. So if Max Holloway successfully defends this belt against Dustin Poirier, I'm not sure it makes a ton of sense, depending on the style points and the performance and the fight itself, for him to make another BMF title defense, even though a Holloway Hooker BMF title fight makes a lot of sense. I think if Max wins this fight, he's going to be talking about the undisputed lightweight championship, and rightfully so. That belt is gold, and it just means a whole lot more to his legacy, which is already Hall of Fame worthy, but I think he would love to give it another push.
Hey, you can't blame him for that, man. And by the way, these guys, him and Dustin Poirier, it's hilarious. You go back in history, it's almost like every 6 years or so they fight. This is the
Ha!
third time they're fighting. First fight was different to the second fight. In the second fight, it was just evident Max is still really more of a featherweight. And every time Dustin hit him, right, it was like two different weight classes. Every time Dustin hit him, it was just more power. It just did more to Max. But we saw him now against Justin Gaethje and what he's able to do at 155. We saw him talk about that. All right, like, I'm going to approach this differently. I'm going to grow into this division more. I know you can't make predictions because you'll be calling the fight, but just from your perspective of what we can expect, do you expect a different looking fight once again to that last fight we saw between Max and Dustin?
I think they're both better versions, right? And even though Dustin Poirier won't be 37 until January, I do think there are a lot of MMA miles on that tank. And I think that has factored into the odds making a little bit, and at least some of the early action as to why Dustin Poirier in his backyard, so to speak, is a slight betting underdog. Now, intangibly, I think both guys are going to be of fine fettle and ready to go. I think the crowd and atmospherically, everything that Poirier is going to deal with emotionally is only going to sort of move him forward. I mean, anything can happen in mixed martial arts. Either one of these guys could get knocked down in a minute or in the final second, as we saw with Holloway and Justin Gaethje. But I just think they're both going to perform well. I think the familiarity is a good thing. I think it'll make for sort of a loose fight week. And I just think it's going to be an epic fight, maybe not quite as epic as UFC 236, another fight that could go into the Hall of Fame, but I think it's going to be crazy. I think both guys are going to have their moments, but yeah, I just think it's the perfect foe for Poirier's final fight. There is no downside for Dustin, even were he to get knocked out quickly. There's no downside to losing to this mountain of an MMA man in Max Holloway, and I can't fucking wait to call it in a week.
If Dustin wins, do we retire the BMF belt, or does it just pop up in another division?
No, it'll pop up. It's a good question. But yeah, I think it'll pop up. I think it has value. Chael Sonnen and I have talked a lot about this off the air and on the air. And the BMF belt has value in multiple divisions. I think really 25 to, I won't say, but I think the BMF belt could be contested in a lot of different divisions where Poirier to win it and sort of lay it down ceremoniously or otherwise. So yeah, I mean, I just think that guys like Dan Hooker, I mean, I think he's sort of the poster boy for fighting for the baddest motherfucker belt, right? So, you know, I think it'll stick around. But I just don't need Max Holloway to be making a second defense of the BMF title, you know?
I'm picking up what you're putting down. By the way, I would have loved one day, just for a little joke, to see you sort of commentate a couple of these 1-minute fights that Dan's doing in New Zealand. Did you see he did another event with the ladies the other day? And I'm just like, it's just missing that Jon Anik, narration as these crazy moments happen. So happy for him, man. Like, he's able to really tap into his passion as a promoter, and he's killing it over there. Like, these are hot events that he's doing.
100%. And he can have my services for free. So it's interesting. And sort of for me as a broadcaster, right, the pull to, I don't want to be a UFC matchmaker, even though sometimes headlines will suggest that I do, right? But to go work for like an NFL or an NBA team at a non-broadcasting capacity is very exciting, right? To think about starting a mixed martial arts or grappling promotion with Kenny Florian is very exciting to me, right? To actually be able to build something like that and not have to talk for a living the way I do. So props to Dan. It's amazing. I have so much passion sort of in that area. I don't know that if I could ever get the traction to do something, but it's really cool to see. And yeah, they got me tuning in. If they need the pipes, they can have them for free.
Dude, I would love to see you have your own thing on the side. We got to have it.
Well, I mean,
what would it be? What would it be? John's.
So I do believe, and it's not because my twin brother is part of the broadcast team, I do believe that Dirty Boxing has found a tremendous rule set inside of combat sports, right? Looking at everything that the UFC does well, but trying to create as many knockouts as possible. Not necessarily moments of virality, but trying to create knockouts. So Dirty Boxing has elbows. You can actually Superman punch. You can't leave your feet in traditional boxing. You can strike a grounded opponent for a time, right? So I think Dirty Boxing has struck the right chord with a rule set. I think if Ken Flo and I were going to do something, it would probably be more like a dirty grappling. And we're trying to trademark dirty grappling already. So there you go.
Awesome. And not the kind that you look on a Friday night at when the family's out of the house. So we're talking about dirty grappling, like the jiu-jitsu, right?
Exactly. Maybe gritty grappling. Maybe we need a different adjective.
I'm in marketing. We'll work on names. Just quickly, before I ask you about Dustin Poirier's legacy in the sport, now that it's almost all done, a lot of people wondering what a fight between him and Ilia Topuria would look like. I mean, it's hard to stop yourself from thinking about, Dustin and Ilia both coming in there, the boxing, the exchanges, Dustin being able to do the impossible so many times and sort of shut the doubters so many times. Are you kind of disappointed we never really get a chance to see that fight as he sort of retires against Max Holloway?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an exciting fight, but because Ilia Topuria is just now arriving in this division, I didn't have wild anticipation or any sort of long-term buildup to see that fight. matchup wise, I certainly think it's interesting. I think it's going to be fascinating just to see how a lot of these lightweights approach fighting Ilia Topuria, right? You see a lot of talking heads saying, you just got to fucking wrestle the guy, right? I mean, you just got to grapple the guy. And I know a lot of people are finding fault with Charles's approach, and I understand that, but Charles has just turned it into a fight trying to knock a motherfucker out. I mean, and it didn't go exceedingly well. But how would Dustin approach the fight? Very technically, obviously, is Dustin going to become an offensive wrestler in a matchup with Ilia Topuria? I don't think so. But he is a fascinating striker and grappler with which to contend. And it's going to be really fascinating to see who is the next title challenger for Ilia Topuria. But I think for Poirier, his legacy is it's near perfect, and it's okay to be one of the best fighters to have never realized undisputed gold. Jimmy Smith, who is a revered MMA broadcaster and combat sports broadcaster, believes that my podcast partner Kenny Florian is the greatest fighter in UFC history to have never realized that prize, and Kenny fought for it 3 times, and kind of is what it is. Kenny didn't even win a regional belt, but he is he's a happy man, and hopefully he can lean into other accomplishments and triumphs.
I imagine for you, though, this is a pretty cool card to work on, right? Like, we don't often get a card where a fighter's retiring. I'm imagining there's going to be some storytelling through the card to talk to his career, maybe look at some of his moments, and then you get to sort of see out this incredible career, and it's all built in the perfect location where the fans, I imagine there's going to be a lot of emotion as he walks out to the octagon for the last time. And it's all kind of a very rare thing to happen in the sport of MMA where, sometimes you have like Jose Aldo sitting on a mat in Canada and we're just like, oh, this is the last time we saw him. You know what I mean? This is like a nice poetic way and a perfect way to see someone say goodbye. How special is this for you to get a chance to work on this one?
It's really going to be amazing. And credit to Dana White and everybody on down for doing this for Dustin Poirier, right? Because Salt Lake City, Utah got pay-per-views in 3 successive years. Now, I don't know the inner workings of the UFC, but I'd imagine they paid a pretty penny to get pay-per-views in 3 straight years. And I don't know the extent to which New Orleans, Louisiana was on the calendar. So to bring a pay-per-view, right? Because you could have done a fight night, I guess, right? Because you don't have undisputed championship stakes here. You don't have the traditional championship doubleheader. To bring a pay-per-view to the Smoothie King Center to honor Dustin Poirier's career, this is really, really unique. And we will certainly take very seriously doing right by him with every utterance all fight week. And just really happy for him. He's realized financial freedom. There was a time when he and I used to talk a lot about television, and he has a lot to offer that medium, but I don't think he's going to be omnipresent on TV because he has a lot of money. And I'm really happy that a fighter like this, who is the very personification and definition of fighter's fighter, who has been in it since the Fightville documentary in his teens, to be able to have realized the financial freedom, it's like almost to hell with the undisputed title.
Paid in full. Before we wrap, do you have 1 or 2 or maybe 3 favorite Dustin Poirier fights that stand out to you? It's crazy, right? Like WEC, UFC, 2 weight classes. You go through his record, you go, like when you go through someone's early record, it's like, oh, he just fought this guy. But when you go through DP's one, you're like, wait, he fought this guy back here. He fought like he's actually fighting massive names through 2 different divisions for such a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you come across all these names, Justin Gaethje and Eddie Alvarez. And I will say one thing about his rivalry with Michael Chandler, that was sort of Dustin Poirier at his sort of truest self, right? Like he's not looking to bury the hatchet with every foe, right? Leaned into that rivalry, got the finish, experienced some adversity, and isn't afraid to call him fake out the other side. So many amazing moments in the career. For me, though, it's the Dan Hooker fight in a COVID-19 climate in 2020. And I know a lot of people who have recently gone back to UFC Fight Pass to watch this fight. And it is amazing to me on both sides that after these strikes landed, that jaws weren't just broken and gallons of blood wasn't coming out of the mouths of both athletes. I know there wasn't a crowd to sort of cloak some of the sound of those strikes, but I think Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker is a Hall of Fame fight. And I think Dustin Poirier is going to go into the Hall of Fame multiple times for one of his engagements with Hooker or Gaethje or whatever it may be. And straight meritocracy on the merits of his own work in the modern era. So total legend. As you can tell, I could go on and on.
The Conor McGregor stuff. So many good moments. There he is, though. Jon Anik. Make sure to check out the Anik Florian podcast. Of course, the Jon Anik app. That's in the description below. You can download that. Check out the lives, the content, all of that, and anything else, John, you want us to keep an eye open for.
Those Jon Bones Jones shorts right behind me. Don't they look nice?
I want to hear the story next time we catch up.
Yeah, I got to find out the genesis, but at least it's authentic. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.